We've done some pretty cool things with lists so far, but let's take lists over into Pygame, and you'll see that we can do some really cool stuff with them. So here is a basic Pygame file. Now let's say I want to simulate snow falling, and I want 100 circles on the screen to be falling down to the bottom. Well, it's going to be a pain to say x1 and x2 and x3 and x4. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to come up with some lists to be able to do that. Now for those of you that are already programmers, I know that this is not the most efficient way and not the best way of doing it. I should be using classes and stuff like that. But for right now, for what we know, lists will work just fine. So I'm coming up with a plan first before I start programming. And here's my plan. Each list is going to have an index, and each list is going to be the same length. I'm going to have one list that's going to store all of my x coordinates for all of my circles, which are going to be my snowflakes. I'm going to have another list that's going to store all of my y values. I'm going to have a third list that's going to store all of my x speeds, a fourth list for my y speeds, and lastly, a list for my radiuses, for the sizes of my circles. Now, when I look at position 0 or index 0, this is going to be all the information I need for this first snowflake. Okay, so snowflake 0, we'll call it, will have an x value, a y value, an x speed, a y speed, and a size as well. The second value in my x list is going to hold the x coordinate for my second snowflake. The third value will be holding the x coordinate for my third snowflake, and it's just going to hold all of the x coordinates. Y is going to hold all of the y coordinates for all of my snowflakes, and you know what speeds do and the sizes as well. So I'm going to think ahead a little bit here, and I'm going to decide how many snowflakes do I want. So I'll call that number. How many do I want? Let's just start off with 50. It's a nice small number. Now I need a list that's 50 long, and it's going to hold all of my x coordinates. So x equals, I'm going to just throw a 0 in for now. Don't worry, I'll pick some x values afterwards. And I'm going to go times numbers. And what that means is I'm going to have a list that's 50 long. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to need a y list as well, right? So 0 times number. And I'm going to need some x speeds. So x speed equals 0. And the 0 is just a starting value. I'll work with it more afterwards. Times number. And y speed equals 0 times number. And lastly, my radius equals 0 times number. So here we've got these 5 lists. They're all 50 long. And the reason I picked this number is if I want them to be 100 long instead of 50, all I have to do is change this one value, and they're all that length now. Okay, so that was just thinking ahead. Yeah, sure, I could have put times 50 times 50 times 50, but if I wanted to change it, all of a sudden I'd have to change all these numbers instead of this just one. So now all of these have an initial value of 0, but that's no good for drawing circles, right? Instead, what we want to do is we want to put the circle somewhere on the screen. Now remember, the size of my window is 800 by 600 right here. You can have yours at whatever you want. So what I want to do is I want to go inside my X list, and instead of having zeros, I want to pick random numbers that somehow fit on the width of my window. And I know how many circles I have. I have 50. So I can say for I in range, instead of typing 50, I can just say length of X. Right? In other words, work my way through my whole X list. What do I want to do? Well, I want to pick some X values. So I will say Xi. So the X that I'm on, and remember this for loop, I will be 0, then it'll be 1, then it'll be 2, and this is how we go through a list and edit the values, right? So whatever index I'm on, the box that I'm looking at, what do I want to do? Random.randRange And I don't care if my circle's partway off the screen. So I'm just going to say anywhere from 0 up to the width of my window. And that way, if I ever change the width of my window, this will automatically update and it will start picking new values. Okay, but I don't want to just pick random x values. I want to pick random y values as well. So let's just do that here as well. So I'm also going to get rand range, also going to get random y values, and that can wait anywhere from 0 up to the height. And not only that, I want to pick my size. So radius, the radius of the circle that I'm looking at, random.randRange. And I'm going to pick my radius to be anywhere from 1 up to 5. And now for right now, I'm just going to set all my y speeds to 1. And I'm going to set my x speeds to 0. That way everything will be falling straight down and I don't have to worry about it moving over at all. So I need to do some processing. But before I do that, let's just draw all these circles to the screen just so you can see that it's actually working. So I need to work my way through all of these lists again. So I can say for I in range, and I can say length of x, or just as well I could just use the word number here. For I in range length of x, what I need to do is draw all these circles. So how do you draw a circle? Pygame.draw.circle, and the first thing that I do is I'm drawing it to my window. And next I need a center of my circle. Well, the center is based on the x value and the y value. And next I need the size of the circle, the radius, and I called that radius. And I lastly need to say whether it's filled in or not, and I can see I forgot something. I need to say that my circles are going to be white. So when I run this, you can see I've got all these circles right here. They're different sizes, they're in random spots, and if I were to run it again, you can see new circles in different spots. If I change my random sizes from 1 up to 20, and I run it again, you can see some of these are up to 20, some of these are really small. These are all random sizes. But the circles just sitting there are kind of boring. So let's move them. So we're going to move them right here. That's a process, that's not a drawing command. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we're just going to move them down. So yi plus equals yi plus equals y speed. Okay, just like before we had y plus equals y speed. Well, now we're just saying the y for the first circle, add on the y speed for the first circle. Now y speed always happens to be 1. We're going to change that in a little bit. But if we do that, we can see all of our circles are now falling down. And of course the problem becomes they're going off the screen and they're never going to come back. Okay, so instead of having a new loop, what we can do right here is we can say, okay, add on to the speed. Now, if we hit the bottom of the window, so if the circle that we're on, if the y value for the circle that we're on is greater than the height of my window, then what do we want to do? We want to reset it back up to the top. So yi equals 0. And we can fiddle with these numbers in a little bit. Now you can see as it gets down to the bottom, it comes right back up here. And we're going to just watch this one for a moment. When he gets down to the bottom, he's going to pop right back up here because we're not doing anything with those x values, right? And so there he is. And he's going to keep coming down. And these shapes are just going to keep coming down and down and down and down. So in order to make it look a little better, what we can do is say is greater than the height plus the size of the circle. Okay? What that means is the whole circle has to be off the height of the window, past the height of the window. And if the circle is smaller, it'll get off faster, and if it's bigger, then it'll get off later. And we don't want to reset it back at 0. We're going to reset it back to minus radius. In other words, set it above the window, whatever the size of the circle is. So when I run this again, we can watch any of these circles. This circle is going to come down and reappear back up here, but it's going to be right off the screen completely. And there it goes back down. Unfortunately, we end up, you can see these 4 right here. And this pattern is going to come right back on the screen, right at the top. So it doesn't take too long and someone will notice that this pattern is just something repeating over and over. Let's make it better. So we don't want to just reset it up at the top. What we want to do is pick a new x coordinate as well. So we can take that circle, move it back up to the top, and move it over into a different spot. And the way we can do that is by picking a new random number. Random.randrange. Anywhere from 0 up to the width of our screen. So now when we go to run it, as soon as the circle goes off the bottom, it might not appear right in the exact same position. So let's look at a pattern. You see these 3 right here? These 3 shouldn't appear right up here again in the same way. See, they're gone. The pattern is completely changing over and over and over. And if we want more circles, this is easy. All we have to do is go back up here. Instead of 50, let's have 100 circles. So now when we run it, there's 100 circles falling. Now this can still be improved a little bit, right? This looks like a flat picture of circles going down a screen. It doesn't exactly look like snow. So let's add a little bit of depth to this. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to set our y speed based on the size of the circle. We're going to assume if a circle is bigger, it means it's closer. So it looks like it's going to be falling faster than a circle that's further away. So we're going to set our y speed based on the radius. And now when we do that, some of these circles will be falling quickly. So what this means is when our radius is 1, our y speed is 1. When our radius is 20, our speed is 20. So it's going to be falling fast if it's big. You'll see this doesn't quite look right yet. See, it looks like there's some depth here now, but the big ones are falling really fast and the small ones are falling pretty slow. So let's slow those big ones down a little bit. So all we can do is we can say divided by 4. Now if I put a single divided by 4 here, some of these will be decimal numbers and then you'll have problems drawing. I'll put divide, which means round to a whole number after you've divided. And they're falling a lot slower now. We can even slow them down a bit more if we divide by a little bit more. Let's try 6. That looks quite a bit nicer. Here's some nice snow falling, except there's a problem. See these back ones? It's not even moving. Okay, so that's because 1 divided by 6, when you round it, you get 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this 1 slash. So we're going to divide this, and that means our y speeds are now going to be decimal numbers. But the problem is, when I run this, I'm going to get an error. It's not working. And that is because, if I can bring this over here, it says that we were expecting an integer when I went to draw the circle, but I got a floating point number. I got a decimal number. So the only way we can fix that is let's go down here. We need to convert, when we're going to draw this location, let's convert that into an integer. So now all we're doing is, let's say our x-coordinate is 25.2. Well, when we actually go to draw it, it's now 25. Okay, so it just kind of rounds this into an integer, converts this decimal number into an integer, and it will still move by decimal number values, except when we actually go to draw it, we'll draw it at the nearest pixel. So if I run this again, you can see it's working fine. This little one back here is moving. It's moving pretty slowly, but it's moving. And so now what I can do, just to make it a little nicer, I think, instead of having them go up to a size 20, let's have them go up to size 10. And instead, let's divide by maybe 3. And let's have 1,000 of them. So now when I go to run it, that looks like a nice snowfall. There's 1,000 circles on there. And they range from radius of 1 up to radius of 10. Well, I suppose radius of 9. And we've slowed it down If we want to slow it down even more, just to make it like a real nice snowfall, we'll divide by 4 instead. That's a little bit nicer. Here's this nice, beautiful snowfall. It looks like there's depth there. There actually isn't, but it looks like it. I've got these beautiful circles all falling down. Now, of course, if we, instead of wanting them to just fall and loop back around, we wanted them to bounce all around the screen, that would be no problem at all. Right here, we're saying if we go past the end, then turn around. All we'd have to do here is to say if we hit a wall, just like you guys did before, then what do we want to do? We want to reverse the speed. Okay, and of course you'd need to give yourself some X speed and some Y speed. You can set them to 1 and -1 or whatever you want here. And then when you hit the wall, times equals -1. And that's all there is to it.